I think there's a decent amount of topic we can talk about here, because everything always is going to route back to Killer Instinct, because it's me, right? If we're going to talk about Microsoft and their insane acquisitions, to me, it's always going to boil back to a fighting game in some way. Long story short, I woke up this morning and I honestly couldn't believe what I saw. I popped open my phone, I opened up the Twitter, and I see all these people talking like now they can put some Call of Duty and World of Warcraft and Diablo characters in KI. My Twitter is naturally, you know, fighting game focused for the most part. And I was just like, what? I'm like looking at my phone, what? And then I started scrolling, and then I went to like, you know, general stuff, and I kept scrolling, and no shit, like I did not believe what I was seeing. I'm sitting here like, I had no, like, how? I don't think there's even any bigger news that can happen in this industry than that. You think Bethesda was a big buy? You think Bethesda was huge? Microsoft just bought Call of Duty. Microsoft just bought World of Warcraft, that nobody likes. Microsoft just bought Blizzard and Overwatch. It's kind of weird that they're like literally making this giant investment over this has probably been going on for a year, right? Like this, how much was Bethesda and ZeniMax? It was like not even 10 billion, right? It was like 7 or something like that. This shit was almost like, what? Almost $70 billion. 68.7 billion. Like, I don't even know of giant telecom conglomerates, like when AOL bought Time Warner, when giant things like that happened in my life, right? Like, I can't even tell you if those were even as big. Like, I don't even know if they were. Like, I'd argue this is one of the biggest acquisitions I have ever seen, ever. And that's insane to me. Marvel bought Fox. Bought literally everything Fox had ever had, right? Every franchise, the X-Men, everything. Marvel bought Fox only a few years ago for like around like 70 billion-ish. This rivals that, you know? This is in the same level of giant multimedia buyouts. Did I say Marvel? I definitely meant Disney. Because Disney was behind that whole thing. And granted, yeah, I'm not surprised, especially considering Warzone over the past few years, that Activision is worth that much. I mean, that makes sense in terms of like a business perspective. Oh, the AOL merger was 182 billion for Time Warner. That's a lot. that was way back in the day too. That was back when AOL was around, so that's a lot. In terms of like video game companies and video game acquisitions, this is absolutely absurd. Much less, I think I'm still shocked that Microsoft has that much money to throw around still after making giant acquisitions before. And much less am I shocked that Activision would be down to be bought out like that. But I mean, I guess that's a big paycheck. I think one of the best case scenarios for this situation is that technically being owned by Microsoft now, because their ass got bought out, that maybe, possibly, Bobby is going to get a big paycheck and get him the fuck out. To me, that's like, it's a win in his situation, and guess what? It's a win for literally everybody else. Get all of the executives that made this deal, get them out of here. You guys can make money, just get the fuck away. There's already some rumors about their presence being potentially gone pretty soon. So I hope it happens, man. Because the thing is, like, Microsoft for the most part isn't the most perfect company by any means, but I think they're substantially better nowadays than whatever the fuck was going on at Activision for the past few years. And I don't even want to talk about it because it just pisses me off really bad the more stories you hear about it. I mean, this wasn't done on a whim. Like we said, this was like a year. This was most likely, this is such a big thing. This probably was literally a year's worth of negotiations to get to this point. The actual business side of it was probably a year. The weirdest thing is that over that year, all this terrible shit happens. Like, I can't say anything positive about Activision or Blizzard. And this technically doesn't close for another year. I see. Gotcha. They have a year to literally work out all of the managerial differences and all of the the top heavy stuff when they eventually move over. Does that make sense? Because things usually take about a year, right? At least a year to a year and a half. But still, if this is a means to that end, that's great. And it's just very bizarre to me that even over the past year or so, Activision is like the worst fucking company in the world. Just the absolute worst at treating humans like humans. All I really care about is the people actually making the games, right? That's what I give a shit about. Like all I really care about in this situation, it is pretty crazy that Microsoft pulls like the biggest goddamn power play in video game history. Like we thought Microsoft buying Rare was crazy back in like the 2000s. This shit is, you don't just go buy Call of Duty, dude. You just don't. Diablo 4 is about to become a Game Pass game. Some stuff will remain on PlayStation platforms, but not everything, right? And of course, you don't spend $70 fucking billion on a company and all its intellectual property so that PlayStation can play along as well. You really don't. Long story short, Warzone and a lot of the existing things that have been around are probably going to work, right? They're probably going to stick around, but brand new Call of Duties, like potentially, I mean, it really depends how the negotiations work, but Modern Warfare 2 is likely the next big Call of Duty game that's coming out this year. That's probably going to be the last COD game that shows up on a Sony console, which is nuts. That's my prediction. I think like you'll get Warzone and Warzone updates because they're just going to continually update that. But when there's like a new client, when there's like a brand new, like a whole new system, when there's a whole new thing that they're doing, the franchise that you get one Call of Duty a year, once you're beyond that, I think they're Xbox only. I think they're going to be Xbox/PC only, and that'll be it. COD makes too much money to make Xbox exclusive. They didn't spend $70 billion to make it not, right? The thing is, like, Activision no longer has to think like, our Call of Duty franchise is too big to not put on other systems. You guys aren't thinking correctly. Call of Duty isn't a franchise that belongs to a third party anymore. They got bought out. Then there could be some consolidation in the same way that Microsoft consolidated things like Minecraft, where they did allow Minecraft to be on other things, but Minecraft had legacy, right? Minecraft had already been on a lot of things in general. So it's kind of hard to like mitigate it all the way back. If you have brand new games, then why would they come out on other things? He doesn't want to segregate the player base? Is that Phil said that? I'm really curious how that's gonna move forward. Right, in the same way that they were saying kind of similar shit about ZeniMax and their buyout when that first happened, when they bought like all of Bethesda. It was like, oh, well, games are still gonna come out on our stuff, right? And they're like, don't worry, stuff will still come out. But once we get beyond the games that have not actually been announced, that's a different story. Those are now Xbox games. So is this good news? I don't know. To me, it's kind of good news because that you have to realize all of the characters from World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Diablo, Overwatch, like anything, right? Crash Bandicoot, whatever the fuck Activision has ever owned. Those are now Microsoft characters in the same way that Master Chief is a Microsoft character, right? They are now Microsoft characters. In my eyes, in my brain, I'm gonna be like, damn, if there is a new KI out there, that is some insane roster potential, is what it is. Good Lord, that is some crazy ass roster potential. Oh my God. And they don't even have to argue about it, right? They don't even have to be like Nintendo and go to everybody and be like, hey, can we use this? Can we use this? How much money we got to use that? Spend all their money on essentially negotiations to get characters in their Nintendo game. Microsoft doesn't even have to do that shit. If they want a game that like pulls in together all their franchises in like a huge mishmash, which has already happened in Killer Instinct, of course I'm thinking about KI, man. Of course I am. Roster is everything in fighting games. Roster is literally everything. And Killer Instinct has always been a game that is just like parody and making fun of other fighting games practically and doing their own versions of it, right? Just tropes and things of the like. Killer Instinct is literally perfect for that shit. It's actually perfect. You could have Banjo-Kazooie as an actual realistic giant bear with a condor on its back, right? You know? Fuck. And then you got fucking Doom Guy. running around with Reaper or some shit, or Tracer. And then you got some asshole from Diablo or World of Warcraft. I don't know any characters' names. Singoth the Warlock, very powerful World of Warcraft character. The Lich King, there you go, there's something I understand. I'm having a tough time processing this. That's such a big acquisition that I'm almost worried that they have no money. But at the same time, they have to have a lot of money. Is Microsoft Games Division doing that good? I guess so, right? You know what? I guess so. If you are wondering how big this acquisition was, here is by market demand what other companies are technically worth. EA's at 38 billion, Take-Two at 18, Nexon at 15, Bandai Namco. I was telling you guys for the longest time, Bandai Namco is like one of the biggest Japanese companies there is. They make so many friggin' games a year. That's a big buy, and that definitely is a big buy. Embracer, I don't even know what that is. I barely know what Netmarble is, sorta. Ubisoft at 7 billion, Konami's at 6. I don't know how. Most likely from their medical equipment or gacha slots or whatever. Square Enix is at 5.6, Capcom at 4.9, and Sega at 3.6. This was the one everyone thought was going to happen. And this is so astronomically small by comparison to what actually happened. So many giant percentages bigger than what the hell. Nintendo is at 61 billion? Wow. Why didn't you just buy Nintendo? Maybe we could actually get Nintendo games to look super good now. Right? Here's the crazy thing, right? I don't know if this is specifically good for like us as the consumers. What it's really good in general is if you are a Games Pass owner. My God, man. Like the value behind Games Pass when you eventually get like new Call of Duties, Diablo games, whatever the hell Blizzard ends up making that's actually new, and it just is free technically, practically, when it comes out. The value of Games Pass is the long running perspective that there is going to be a Netflix of video games eventually, right? We're gonna have a Netflix of video games. And now Microsoft is getting so far ahead of the curve in terms of what that service could be. Game Pass is now so big and offers so much shit, and is eventually now going to offer $70 billion more worth of franchises and more shit to put onto it, that it's insane. Not to mention they bought Sierra, right? They literally bought classic PC game, like in general. I think that was somewhere in the contract as well, that old Sierra games are also included. The only thing I'm worried about is competition. But here's the thing, like who the fuck was, who was Activision in competition with? Who were they competing with? They never gave a shit. Activision has been sitting high on top of a money pile ever since Call of Duty 4, right? EA? I don't know, man. Like, I guess, in your guys' perspective, and I'm kind of curious about this, does it feel like Battlefield is an active competitor to Call of Duty? Does that feel like that's the case? Because as somebody on the outside, hell no, it doesn't seem that's the case. It seems like Battlefield does fine, right? And as someone that has dabbled in some Call of Duties every once in a while, I've not really played anything consistently since Black Ops 4. All things considered, to me, it feels like they sort of exist side by side. Maybe before. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe at some point before they were. I would say if Battlefield had a really expansive and really popular Warzone thing, then maybe. Because the only competitor for Warzone now, outside of Fortnite, which is its own thing practically, is like Apex. You know, and those are the big things. Actually, I literally forgot Apex is also EA. I literally forgot that is an EA game as well. So instead of Battlefield, I think Apex is the more appropriate game. Clearly, there was more value in a Call of Duty situation, right? There's more value in an Activision buyout in general because of how many different facets Activision has. The Blizzard aspect alone is big, right? The worst thing about Blizzard has been the last year and realizing how shitty they are ever since they got bought out by Activision. That was like the worst news that could ever happen to Blizzard when we found out about that, because ultimately we knew things were going to hit the fucking fan terribly, and all the executives at Blizzard that pretty much survived it said that's what happened. The company essentially turned to shit. I think we're not also realizing like the other small things about this acquisition that is fucking crazy. Do you have any idea how many people still play Candy Crush and spend a lot of money on it? You don't. Long story is you don't. Like Candy Crush, I don't even know how you integrate that into the Xbox branding in some way, but it's absolutely insane how much money that is. and how much money that will rake in for Microsoft over the years. My whole point of this conversation, because this is still astronomical news, I hope that this actually changes a lot of the absolutely disgusting culture that has existed in Activision and Blizzard over the past few years, or many years. And this allows that shit to go away without people losing their jobs like crazy. Most of the time, acquisitions, people lose their jobs. I don't know if that's going to be the case, because normally with video game development, you want to keep things going that are making money. We'll see how that goes. But I hope it works out, and I hope it's actually a way out for all the pieces of shit that have been working at Activision Blizzard for all these years and making so many millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. Because at least Xbox at this moment seems like they have a head on their shoulder, right? At least at this moment, there is some stuff that's going on where it seems like, okay, they're playing hardball right now, and they're making a lot of consumers happy, right? Here's my question. What the hell is Sony doing that potentially triggered this? Because these aren't buy-in alone products of just like, hey, you know, let's just go over to Activision and fire up a conversation. We're looking to spend $70 billion, right? There's a very good chance that Sony is probably going to make a move that is fairly large or big in a very similar way at some point this year, right? There's probably a fairly decent chance that Sony is like striking back in some way. It is not one thing to just hope that you make a whole bunch of money in terms of business. It's also that your competitors do not make money. That's important, because if your competitors aren't making money, then you make more money. I'm a little curious if Sony has something going on in the background, right? I'm sort of curious if this equates back to something that Sony's looking to buy some big company in some way, and they're going to make some giant acquisitions, because that's usually where this stuff leads. We already learned that Sony has made a ton of acquisitions over the past year. Like, they made a lot. Nothing in the same vein as Microsoft, right? Nothing like buying out Bethesda or Activision or Blizzard. But they bought a lot of studios, man. We have not seen Sony make a giant deal yet, right? We have not seen them invest like in a big way with a really big company. And to me, there's a couple companies on here that make a lot of sense to me, and they're right next to each other. To me, there's like a possibility at some point this year, potentially Square Enix or Capcom, in my opinion, like, they feel fucking ripe for the picking. They honestly do. We'll see. I speak some weird shit into existence sometimes, but I don't know, man. We might be looking at a very different industry going forward after all this shit. Because when these giant acquisitions happen, your competitors don't sit idly by and just continue to do what they're doing. They don't. This is where the industry is going. And if this is another hint at Sony's potential Games Pass, right? Because it's already been rumored that Sony is going to be doing something, right? They already have a bunch of stuff in the background about licensing and getting rights for backwards compatibility. We don't know what exactly it's for. We don't know what it's for. As long as they're always competing with each other, you got to understand this acquisition happened because of competition, right? If Sony was not already doing great with PlayStation, right? If Microsoft didn't have an issue with the Xbox, the Series X, One S, whatever the fuck the new system is called, I still don't know. If they didn't have a problem with their fridge not having that many games when it first came out, this stuff wouldn't have happened. This is directly an answer to that stuff because what they're doing in the background is going well. Their Games Pass thing is making them a shit ton of money. So because of this, competition is breeding this shit to happen. And yeah, it does absolutely feel like, Jesus, man, what doesn't Microsoft have at this point? Like, what do they not have? Really, there's still quite a bit. Right? Sony still has a lot of absolutely insane exclusives, and the industry's not going to get smaller. Yeah, remember when everyone was saying the new Xbox had no games? Now they have too many games. Now you don't know what the fuck to play. So it's going to take a few years for Xbox to really get those crazy exclusives, like a new Doom or something like that, that will make me like really like, goddamn, am I glad I have this shit. But outside of like I said, like KI and like a few titles, something here and there, I just personally, all the Sony franchises, I kind of want to play more, right? I think that's only an issue for me personally currently, because the acquisition level that Microsoft has gone over the past like year and a half, the amount of stuff that they've bought out, doesn't mean that we're just going to get dividends of all of that immediately. It's going to take time. It's going to take, this is like a long time investment. This is shit we're going to be seeing for the next like decade. Number one, Sony can't get complacent again. When Sony gets complacent, everybody suffers, right? Y'all fucking forget about arrogant Sony. They're sort of there a little bit with the PS5. A little bit over the past year. We don't want to deal with arrogant Sony again. So Microsoft doing this shit is essentially keeping Sony in check. Keeping like the PlayStation in check. There's a good chance that relatively soon we could get some fantastic announcements from PlayStation end. From the PlayStation end of this. Which would be good, right? That would be fucking great. I'm really curious how Sony responds. Anyway, this is still floating through my head, and I don't think I've actually grasped how big it is. Is this a monopoly? Yes, but this is America, so you just buy your way through laws.